let's continue with the road freight sector. Joining us tonight, the CEO of the Road Freight Association, Gavin Kelly. Gavin, good evening to you. How are you doing tonight? How are your members doing?
Good evening. It's been a rough 6 days, probably a little bit more than that when the first sets of violence actually started. As you've seen on various social media channels, it's been an absolute slaughter out there in KZN and Gauteng. Other parts of the country haven't been affected yet, thank goodness. There have been a couple of areas where there's been a little bit of uprising and sporadic violence. Seems to have been quelled pretty quickly. But we have had depots, distribution centers, and regional distribution centers absolutely looted and destroyed. It's really, really a bad picture.
What are the things that your members are raising with you rather in this moment?
What are they raising? Well, I think the first thing is everyone is very, very concerned about their safety. We don't want to send any employers out on any sort of route where there's any risk. We don't want to lose any employees. We've had a torrid time over the last few years with having drivers being burnt in their trucks, being attacked. Thank goodness we haven't had that this time round. It hasn't been focused on individual drivers. So first of all, there are many, many requests continuously, literally every 10 minutes. Transporters will ask us, is it safe on this route? Is it safe on that route? What's the status here and there? There are problems on the N3. The lower part below Sidara is still closed at the last report, which means that the main arterial from the Port of Natal, from KZN, where there's a lot of manufacturing industries, a lot of food industries as well, just cannot get their goods up through to Gauteng or into Africa, and the same with Africa exports, imports, whichever way it's going, can't get down through that route. The N2 is a bit same, of the same sort of thing. The biggest concern, obviously, is that the attacks that were on routes suddenly went into retail centers and what have you. So the top of mind, is it safe? Can we move? And, well, how are we going to get more goods?
The fact that you haven't been able to move, in particular, along the main arterial roads coming out of the port of KZN, what is the impact of that on your clients?
Well, obviously, the trucks are standing for those guys who run that route specifically, who run through KZN. The impact is that they're standing. And once the truck starts to stand, it doesn't earn money. That's really what happens. Contractual obligations could possibly be a problem. There are some suppliers, as you will have seen, the fuel industry has called force majeure, and there are a couple, and Transnet's called force majeure down at the port in terms of what's happening there. So we're not getting containers out right now. We can't move that. And there are a fair amount of transporters who don't have the luxury of a contract, so they get paid per job. So there are a lot of guys who are just not generating revenue.
Do you have a sense that this situation is under control? Are you satisfied with the way in which it has been handled?
Definitely not. And I suppose, you know, the South African Police Service might jump up and down and say we're doing the best we can. Well, given what we've seen, that just isn't good enough. We understand that they're stretched. We understand that they have been very reactive. But, you know, I didn't get much of what your previous guest said, but I did get the gist that somebody knew this was coming and the planning needed to have been done. So, no, we don't think there's enough protection. Definitely not. There's far too few feet on the ground. And at this stage, it seems to be, well, look after yourself until we can sort out a plan. So not very happy with that at all.
You've referenced the fact that it's not the first time that we see the freight industry being targeted in the midst of protests. It's happened previously. Why do you think that your industry is such a target during times of upheaval and unrest?
Well, it seems to be really three issues that I think come to mind immediately. There might be a couple more. I think the first thing is that trucks are everywhere on the roads all over South Africa, nice big trucks, and they move slowly. There are places where they need to stop, and in this case, Moya River Toll Plaza was a very good example, that the trucks had queued up there while waiting to go through, and a couple of trucks stopped there to rest and to buy provisions. So the first thing is that there are a lot of trucks on the road, and there are a lot of places where they travel slowly and have to slow down or stop, or even rest. I think that's the first thing. The second thing is that they're a target not only because they are trucks, and it sounds facetious, but they're a target because of what they're carrying. And I think that's the opportunistic crime that becomes this huge problem. So when there's a local service delivery protest or whatever the case may be, truck gets stopped and then they get looted. It's an opportunity to find out what's in the back of the truck. And then finally, when you want to block a road, if you take a little motor vehicle, it's not going to block much easy to move, I suppose. When you have something that's a good 56 odd tons, it's 22 meters long, you can draw it across the number of lanes of a road, and that immediately creates a backlog and immediately creates a log jam. And then when you burn it, it's a fantastic fire. So, of course, media rush to something like that, and you can very quickly get attention and then put across your point of view or whatever you're really trying to push. So I think those are the three main reasons why. But the opportunistic crime is the one that has really stuck its head out in the last couple of years.
Gavin, are you even at the point as a sector where you're beginning to look at the restoration of the supply chain that has been incredibly disrupted and how long it will take to restore?
Oh, yes. Obviously, what many of our members have done and many of the role players have done is they've already started to try and understand what sort of damage has happened and whether some of those facilities can be cleaned up as quickly as possible and can be utilized, because we don't want to stand around and not operate. We obviously understand the severe crisis in terms of basic foodstuffs that are not available in some parts of the country. I mean, you have seen all those stories of how many of our normal retail shops have been vandalized, and those goes into the thousands, little businesses as well as chain stores. So we obviously want to try and get the basic foodstuffs, the pharmaceuticals and the medicines, and especially the COVID-19 vaccines, back into those centers as quickly as possible. How quickly is that going to be possible? Well, while there's still rioting and there's still violence happening, it's a bit of a catch-22. No one's really going to go and clean up a store and restock it with a chance that there's going to be another looting spree. So really, really, we need the police and the army to do what they do to bring back normality, to secure those corridors, because that's the next thing. We need to have a very secure N3 and N2 if those are the areas where most of the hotspots are, so we can move product.
Gavin Kelly is the CEO of the Road Freight Association, bringing us the latest then from his industry and what the way forward is for them in this moment.